Got a buck at 100 yards.
Oh shit, where is it?
Just down there in front of the dead wood.
Oh shit, I see it.
What's it, another whitetail?
No, man, that's an axis buck. A good sized one, too.
We got him broadside. Who's taking the shot?
I want him.
Don't be greedy, Donnie. You've already pulled 3 bucks out of here.
Oh, fine, it can be a liberal deer.
You want it, Joe?
Now, I wouldn't want to be associated with Nazis.
Wait, what?
They aren't axis power deer. These are Indian deer, tiger food.
Bro, it's 2024. You're supposed to say Native American deer.
Dot Nut Feather Barack, take the shot before he hears us.
I got him.
He's down. Great shot.
Yeah, that's how a Democrat gets it done.
No shit, that deer hit the ground quicker than Joe on a bicycle.
Thanks, boys. Man, that was awesome. We got to get down there.
Let's bounce.
There he is.
Wow, he's big up close.
That's what all the ladies tell me.
And he's chocolate vanilla chip flavored.
What a beautiful animal. This part always gets me emotional.
Oh, great, here come the tears.
Quiet, you. The man is having a moment.
I'm so thankful for the life that was lost in order to feed my family and friends the cleanest food the land can produce. It's truly a privilege and an honor. And I can't thank George enough for the opportunity to bring down one of these beauties.
It's my pleasure to share these moments with people that appreciate the land and the animals that live on it.
All right, enough mushy talk. This isn't a Disney movie. Are we cutting this guy up?
No need. We have a system in place.
What the hell?
Is that a drone?
Everybody hit the deck. Obama isn't fucking around this time.
Joe, calm down. It's not one of mine.
Oh, that's a relief.
Wait, this thing's taking my deer?
Yeah, it's a new butcher drone. Elon made it for me when I had him out here.
Wow, is it really going to do all the butchering for us?
You bet. Gets the job done in 22 minutes flat.
Where's the fun in that?
You seriously want to butcher a whole deer when a robot can do it for you?
The whole point of hunting is a way to harvest your meat without robots doing all the work.
Butchering isn't something we have time for when there's more deer out here to shoot.
What about my trophy?
You'll have your trophy and the meat before you leave. ButcherBot does taxidermy too.
Alrighty then. Why don't we get back to the tier list?
Okay, so we just finished birds. What next?
How about we move on to deer?
The prize of a hunting season. Deer are the #1 target of hunters for a reason.
What deer are we starting with?
Why don't we cover the common whitetails before we get into axis deer, because they are easy to compare.
You can't get much better than a white-tailed deer. They are so common in the U.S. that most people have had multiple experiences with them and have never hunted before.
Unfortunately, most of the time, those experiences are on the highway.
Roadkill is also a sign of healthy deer population.
Maybe too healthy. If deer don't stay in the woods, it's probably pretty crowded in there.
Hitting a deer is no joke. Roadkill kills more than just the animal sometimes.
If anything, it's a testament to how wide the range of the animals is.
True. They can adapt to many different environments and thrive where most species would never be able to.
As far as yield, it's the largest animal on the list so far, besides maybe a giant python.
It's also in the conversation for the tastiest. Nothing much better than fresh venison.
You get like 120 pounds of good meat plus antlers and great trophy mounts. It's an easy S tier for yield.
Hell yeah, backstraps are goated.
Sport is up there too. There's a reason it's so popular. It's not easy, and there's definitely days where the best hunters can't even get eyes on a deer, but it's not super difficult and worth the time spent to find one.
There are a ton of different options as far as approach. You can stalk deer by hiking up a hillside and glassing the surrounding area until you get eyes on a nice buck. Then you try and get as close to your target as possible to take your shot.
That's some good deer stalking, but most hunters are partial to a more stagnant approach to avoid throwing their scent all over the place. Depending on conditions, a deer will usually smell you before they see you.
Sounds like somebody I know.
Hey,
I like the way we're doing it right now. Find a good spot that's higher than the area around you and try to attract them to you with scents and calls.
Tree stands are great for this species too. Gets your scent up off the ground.
It kind of sucks that if you want to be successful, you got to go into the woods smelling like deer piss.
It's all worth it when you finally get a deer down.
The methods are worth the result for sure. I think it's S tier for sport as well.
Yep, it's no walk in the park, but there's nothing more fun when you get eyes on the target.
It's not a monumental amount of effort either, no matter what approach you take.
it's very comparable to most other hunts, except you don't have to go far to target them, no matter where you are in the country.
Although they are super common, it can still take a few trips before you finally get your opportunity.
Of course, it's all dependent on conditions and location. For example, it's a lot harder to stalk in very dry conditions during fall because each step makes a leafy crunch as opposed to a damp spring morning.
Sure, the difficulty can be seasonal, but as long as you get 1 or 2 a year, it's enough to fill up your meat freezer.
Agreed. I'm not quite at S tier on effort because it's never a guarantee that you'll even see a deer, regardless of whether you did everything right or not.
I'm thinking B tier on effort, because once you do actually get it down, you have an animal about the size of a person that you need to cut up and carry out of the woods with you.
It's worth all that effort in the end, but there's a lot of work to be done in order to fully process a deer. B tier is fine for effort.
And finally, what about expenses?
Outside the main weapon, you want camo and some knickknacks like scents and calls, but that's about it.
It's honestly kind of up to each hunter. If you want to do it with a bow and arrow, it'll be more difficult but extremely cheap.
If you're just getting into hunting, I'd definitely stick to rifles. You need much more experience and confidence to head out there with a bow.
Good thing crossbows exist.
Well, you still got to load it, which can cost you a deer.
Yeah, I would get a rifle if you got the money.
I think we can average it at a B tier since you have the option.
What's the final verdict on the whitetail?
It's an easy S tier, third in a row.
Yep, no contest.
I think whitetails are the absolute best animal you can target. Great for beginners and veterans alike.
I think we can all agree on that. What about muleys?
Ah, yes, a good old mule deer.
These guys are the second most common deer species in the U.S. and a favored target of hunters in the West.
You won't find any mule deer in this part of Texas, but they are found from West Texas all the way to California and from Mexico to communist Canada.
I'm a whitetail connoisseur, but I've never laid eyes on a mule deer before. What's the difference?
Well, physically, they are practically the same size and color with a few key differences. They have darker antlers for one, but the best way to spot a mule deer is to look at their ears and tails.
Mule deer have big ears and black spots on the end of their tails. The black spot is important because mule deer can have even more white on their asses than a white-tailed deer, but whitetails don't have the giant dark spots at the end.
I just look at the ears. If it looks like a Mickey Mouse deer, it's probably a muley.
After seeing both species up close, it starts to become pretty easy to distinguish the two species. As far as behavior, they are actually quite different.
Yeah, I actually prefer the hunt for mule deer over whitetails. Mule deer travel long distances and higher altitudes in search of food, while the whitetails tend to stay in one area, usually a mile or so.
Another key difference is white-tailed deer spook easier from smells and sounds, so they are much more likely to evade a hunter than a mule deer.
And that means the spot and stalk method is far more viable. You can really show your hunting prowess when it comes to chasing mule deer, as opposed to just sitting around and waiting for a whitetail to cross you.
Sounds like more effort to me.
You just don't want to haul your fat ass uphill.
Don't pretend you're about that life. You're definitely getting lost in the woods if you tried to stalk a mule deer.
No problem for the Presidential Rescue Team.
I think sport is still S tier. In fact, it's the same as whitetail for yield, sport, and expenses as well.
The only key difference is the fact that you will probably need to hike around more and possibly at elevation. That, combined with possible traveling and scouting in unfamiliar territory, is gonna put the effort from a B tier to a C tier.
Mule deer sound really fun. I've only really hunted on the East Coast, so I've never had a real shot at them.
And I'm sure people on the West Coast and in the mountains feel the same way about the eastern white-tailed deer.
Only on the far west, though. White-tailed deer share the range with mule deer more often than not.
The fact remains, it's harder to find muleys than whitetails in the U.S.
Yeah, but it's like the smallmouth bass versus largemouth bass argument. Sure, smallmouth are harder to find, but they offer a better fight than the same-sized largemouth.
Sure, but whitetails are bigger on average and have a far wider range, just like the largemouth bass.
It's a good analogy if you're coming from a fishing background.
Most people who hunt are into fishing. It's the gateway drug of killing things.
Sounds like mule deer are high tier, but do they make S tier?
Bars. I don't know about S tier. They seem like an A tier to me.
Hunters from the Rockies are not gonna like that take, Bro Obama.
Yeah, it's going to be open season on your drones.
I just think mule deer offer a more difficult set of challenges than hunting whitetails.
That may be true, but it doesn't help the fact that mule deer offer a better hunt than the whitetails do in general.
Yeah, but there's also way more white-tailed deer, with roughly 30 million in the U.S. compared to just under 4 million mule deer. This makes finding mule deer a much harder task in this country.
I definitely prefer hunting for whitetails rather than stalking the exact same thing above the tree line. A tier is fine.
I don't really have enough experience with mule deer to disagree.
All right, fine, but don't come crying to me when you get assassinated by some dude from Colorado.
Cool. Let's move on to the Sitka or black-tailed deer.
Well, this is just basically a mule deer.
That's mostly correct, but they are still considered to be a different species and are located on the west coast and in some parts of Canada and Alaska. Also, the behavior of the black-tailed deer is more often closer to the white-tailed deer rather than the mule deer, and are often smaller than either.
Sounds like Sitka deer are a straight downgrade from the more common ones.
Same deer, different look.
Not really. I've heard it said that white-tailed deer taste better compared to the other native deer.
Venison is still venison.
For me, it entirely depends on what the animals are eating. That's why I plant lots of corn, wheat, and alfalfa on the property. Age and season also come into play here.
It's true that a young white-tailed buck feeding on crops will always taste better than a 5-year-old rutting mule deer feeding on sage and acorns.
Doesn't matter what they're eating or what deer it is. If it's a fawn, it's gonna taste great. They even smell better.
Dude.
I knew Biden liked to sniff kids, but I didn't know he's eating them too. This is gonna tank your poll numbers even more.
Motherfucker, you've never eaten veal before?
All the time. I love me a veal parmesan sub.
That's baby cow.
Shit! Well, my point still stands. How can you shoot fucking Bambi?
Bambi's meat is nectar of the gods.
Bro, what?
He's spitting facts the world isn't ready for.
Well, it's illegal to shoot fawns most places and downright immoral.
Oh, great. Now Barack's whining makes me want to shoot one.
Do not kill Bambi or Bambi's mom. It's just not cool.
Agreed, but you can still take does without fawns, and with that being said, I think yield is at A tier due to them being smaller with the rest of the stats matching mule deer, although blacktails might taste a little better than muleys on average.
That sounds like another downgrade. Are we at B tier for these?
I'd say so. To even target these in the U.S., you either need to go to the liberal dystopia that is the Pacific Northwest, or freeze your tits off in Alaska.
Alrighty then, it's time to rank these fine axis deer.
KKK deer?
Again, these deer are not politically affiliated.
Well, you just took one down, Barack. How was it?
As good as any whitetail I've hunted. Pretty similar.
They also usually travel in small herds, making it easy to locate smaller bucks that stick around the herds.
And that's an instant S tier for sport matching the whitetail.
How do they compare on the dinner table?
There's a reason this species was imported to Texas. Axis deer is the best tasting venison I've ever had.
Joe Rogan practically lives on this stuff. He takes like $3 off the property a year.
I can't wait to get into some axis backstraps. So it's another S tier on yield?
For sure. It's about the same amount of effort, too.
Facts. B tier on effort, but the expenses are a lot worse considering you got to come to Texas to hunt for them.
There's also some in Hawaii.
I knew there was deer, but I had no idea there was axis deer in my home state. I'll need you all to come out for a hot Hawaiian hunt.
Aloha, count me in.
Sounds great, but the fact of the matter is these are premium deer, and it'll cost you to target them. If we didn't have George's ranch, we would all be paying a pretty penny to hunt on private land for these axis deer.
That should drag them down a tier or two.
Yeah, I'd go C tier on expenses.
Overall, it's definitely worth the price to get one of these in your freezer.
I don't think it's a must for every hunter in the U.S. to get an axis deer, but if you're lucky enough to live in Texas or Hawaii, it's worth going after them for sure. I'm feeling an A tier.
That's a fine ranking. I'd much rather travel for an axis deer over any other type of deer.
What about the most majestic deer in the world, the elk?
Now we're getting somewhere. Elk are the gigachads of hunting.
I don't even really think about elk when discussing deer hunting because it's such a unique animal when compared to its cousins.
The famous bugle of an elk cuts through miles of dense forests and is the most recognizable call from any animal besides a turkey.
You know you're going after something crazy the first time you hear that wild screech. It's almost like you're hunting something from science fiction.
It doesn't help that they get 3 or 4 times larger than any deer on this list. These things are massive and tasty too.
Are they better than axis deer?
I'd say it's close, but elk takes the W. Elk is closer to beef than venison and has a little sweetness to the taste rather than the gamey taste that venison is known for.
I guess since it's in the conversation for the best tasting, and the fact that they get up to half a ton makes it an easy S tier for yield.
But what about sport? All my older hunting buddies said it was the peak of hunting.
My sons are huge big game hunters, and they say hunting elk is like a religious experience.
They're just like a mule deer on steroids. They like high elevations and are highly migratory, meaning it's no easy task to track one down.
What's great about elk compared to mule deer is the fact that you can call them in like a turkey.
Mule deer can be called in situationally, but nothing like elk. Plus, they don't spook as easy as any of the other deer species, so when you do call them in, your odds are good to get a shot off.
That's why elk is popular for archers. It's actually easier to hunt elk than it is to hunt whitetail with a bow, since whitetails are so easy to spook.
Elk are sounding like the best of both worlds since you spot and stalk them and call them in.
S-tier sport for sure. Is it any more expensive to take these guys down than a mule deer?
Pretty much the same for gear, but elk tags are much more expensive. For example, it's about $650 for a bull elk tag in Colorado, and that's the cheaper end. It can cost double that and more.
Geez, that's some heavy Skrilla.
You'll need a small loan to target these mythical beasts.
Upside is the fact that you get enough meat to feed a village. Everybody you know with a freezer is going to be holding your elk meat.
The fact still stands. There aren't many animals on the list so far that have outrageous tag prices, but elk are up there with the most expensive.
It's going to be on the pricier end for gear, too. I could see D-tier for expenses.
We're even being generous at D-tier. All the elk hunters I know are fully kitted up with the best gear the Bass Pro Shops can offer.
That leaves us with effort.
Everything is the same as a mule deer until the second it hits the ground. At that point, you got a dead animal that weighs more than all of us combined.
Are you sure about that? Donnie's standing right here.
Very funny, Elmer Flub.
It can be a lot of work and is really a 2 or 3 man job.
Fuck that, one trip.
This isn't like bringing groceries from your car into your house. This is a lot of bloody work.
Plus, most elk live in bear country, so you might need to think about carrying a sidearm or bear spray.
We just keep running up the price tag.
It feels a little different when you're hunting in a place where you can be hunted.
Just carry extra honey and raw fish on you as a peace offering.
Great advice, Joe. You'll be making friends with every bear within miles.
So if elk is more effort than a mule deer to process, then that puts effort at D tier.
2 S tiers and 2 D tiers. Where the hell do we rank it?
Well, clearly we don't take an exact average from the stats. So which categories mean more to us?
At the end of the day, the joy of hunting is in sport and yield and worth every bit of money and effort it takes. I personally would put elk in S tier. Nothing quite like them.
I agree, it's expensive and half a ton of work, but it's also a hunter's dream to go after a big bull elk.
I do think it's worth going after them, but not S tier. It's simply too tall a task for every hunter to tackle, not to mention how much money it costs.
I'm thinking elk are still high tier from the meat alone, but I'm not lugging 3 Donnies up and down hills.
Do you guys think we can settle on A tier?
I can't do that. It's the peak.
I suppose if I pretended I wasn't filthy rich, I would be less inclined to hunt them. A tier is okay, but I wanted on the record that S tier was my first choice. I need to win Colorado and Idaho.
Idaho, all right.
All right, we have one member of the deer family left, the legendary moose.
Mesas are the best.
I've never seen one of these giants, more of a northern animal.
Their range is pretty limited in the U.S., having pockets of them in northern states with a majority in Alaska. This is the largest member of the deer family and can weigh up to 1,800 pounds.
What's the deal with hunting them? Is it like anything we've ranked so far?
It's sort of like hunting a giant semi-aquatic elk. They love to hang out in and around the water whenever it's not frozen.
I've heard some people even spot them from boats before stalking them from the shore.
That means you can go fishing whenever you don't see moose.
Sure, but if you shoot a moose in the river, now you have a dead moose in the river, you gotta pull out.
You're not pulling a moose anywhere, and you don't want to have to field dress a moose in the more than likely freezing water. If a moose is in the water, just don't even try to shoot it.
From what I hear, it's an unavoidable reality of moose hunting. If they're near water when you shoot them, they'll often head right into it before they die.
What the hell do you do when a moose is dead in the water?
Some people say you can inflate the moose in its chest cavity with an air pump for extra buoyancy so you can tug it around.
You're definitely going to need to bring a strong rope or wire with you on any moose hunt.
How's the sport of the hunt compared to its smaller cousins?
Not too different. You can still get up on a hill to spot and stalk them like an elk or a mule deer, and you can certainly use moose calls during the rutting season. You'll just be doing everything near water or in the snow, depending on the season.
You really got to think about the butchering before the actual hunt. This is not a solo venture, so you might need 3 or 4 guys with you to successfully get all the meat out. This means you might be hunting for moose, but aren't even the one taking the shot.
Even if you are the one to take the shot, there's another few guys that need to be there the second it falls in order to be successful. This drains some of the fun out of the overall process for each hunter on average.
Sounds like most of the time you're just fishing until it comes time to be a butcher.
You say it like it's a bad thing. I'd love to go camping with the possibility of taking home hundreds of pounds of meat.
You still got to participate with scouting and glassing. I'm feeling a B tier on sport because it's a team effort until you have one in your sights, and if you miss or something happens, you get a bunch of guys standing there thinking they should have the gun.
Sound reasoning, George. I'm with you.
And how's moose taste?
I've read it's like elk, but can be a little gamier depending on age, sex, season, and location.
That's still loads of good, clean meat. That combined with the legendary moose antlers makes moose an obvious S tier on yield.
It's almost like moose is in another tier of its own when it comes to yield, but you are going to be giving most of the meat away realistically.
Well, you only have so much room in your freezer.
Especially when you're Joe and half of it is filled with ice cream already.
Facts.
As far as effort, this has got to be F tier. Most amount of work overall of any on this list.
The processing is hefty, I agree.
What about expenses? Are tags like elk expensive?
Even worse than elk at times, especially for non-residents. I've heard tales of tags reaching over $20,000 in Alaska, which is where most moose are in the U.S.
$2,000 to $5,000 is about what to expect per tag, but it can get way worse.
Oof, that's pretty steep.
Not to mention you'll need a rifle with some power on it, or you'll watch it walk directly into the nearest swamp before dying.
A 30-06 is fine, but shot placement will beat caliber any day. You can still use the same rifles on moose and elk as you would for deer.
Still not good for expenses, even if you split the cost of the tag between the hunting party.
F tier on expenses. It doesn't seem worth it for non-residents.
That's probably the point. I agree on F tier. No normal American is spending the price of a car on a hunting tag.
So what do y'all think? Does the worst price and effort hurt this hunt?
It sounds like most of the hunt is carrying meat, so I would rather not.
It's really not for most people, but it can be extremely rewarding and a great group event.
It's got to be the right circumstances for a good result. It's not worth it if you don't have a connection with a resident or if you don't have the money to get a guide.
I don't think it's in any low tiers, still holds the spirit of the best hunts and offers a mother load of food.
How would we feel about B tier?
It feels wrong putting moose in the same category as squirrels.
I think B tier is okay. Moose hunting is very niche when you take the whole country into perspective.
Maybe not shoot anything that's bigger than your car.
On the contrary, this makes me want to do a big game hunting tier list.
Well, we've covered a lot of the big game animals already, but it did take a while to cover the smaller ones.
I say we do a hunting and trapping tier list and a big game list with safari animals on there.
I'll make sure to ask my sons about that. They've killed everything in Africa except apartheid.
Wow, did we want to cover any more?
There are so many I could ask for. Let me think.
What was that?
Oh look, here come the boars. Open fire.
Oh, fuck!
Holy shit!
Ah!
They're coming right at us.
I'm out.
Me too.
I forgot how to reload.
That's all I got. Is that all of them?
Nope, there's one more, and he's a big one.
Bummer.
Well, it was nice knowing you guys.
I'm taking something with me. Nice shot. Who dropped him?
Hey, fellas.
Ah!
Joe, stop it. He's clearly human.
Just remembered how to rechamber around, huh?
Yep.
You missed me about a foot to your right. You got to check that scope.
Steve, boy, am I glad to see you.
Oh yeah, the MeatEater himself. Love the show.
Who's this guy?
It's Steve Rinella. He's got that show MeatEater on Netflix.
Nice to meet you, Mr. President.
Thanks for killing that thing for us.
No problem. I'll never pass up an opportunity to control the infestation. So what are you grandpas up to?
Just shooting the shit.
Before these boar rolled up, we were just looking for deer. The usual.
I shot a nice Axis buck not too long ago.
Yeah, I saw it being airlifted to the barn. Looked like a good buck, man.
I appreciate it. We were also making a hunting tier list if you want to give your thoughts on it.
Maybe you can rank a few with us.
I'd be happy to take a look. All right, let's see. Turkey S tier. Good. You know, I like the fact that this list has categories. There's much more to hunting than how much it costs or what food you get out of it.
How do you feel about the rankings?
Pretty good. Yeah, I like where our heads are at with the top tiers. Wait, is that mule deer down in A tier?
Yep.
That's pretty bogus. Muleys are a personal favorite of mine. They'd be an S tier in my book.
You can blame the liberals.
I hear you. They argued availability and effort makes them worse than whitetails.
I get that, but there's nothing like stalking a big old mountain buck. Sport means a lot more to me as a hunter and entertainment.
I figured you would be more into the food part, like me, since your show is MeatEater.
It's MeatEater, Joe.
My point stands.
Although the woods is my grocery store, I still take pride in all the aspects of hunting. Namely, managing the amazing wildlife on these lands that I love so future generations can enjoy them as I have.
Amen to that.
All right, what should we rank next? Wild boar?
I guess so, seeing as there's like 12 dead ones laying here. Should we start carving them up?
Nah, butcher drone can take care of them all.
Damn, these robots are going to destroy hunting. One day, nobody's going to know how to field dress an animal.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if people stopped hunting like you and started hunting like Obama did during his term.
Kaboom! Remember when we were the only ones sending drones? Those were the days.
I try to forget those days.
Well, if there was any animal I would condone killing with unfair technology, it would be these guys.
It helps that there's absolutely no limitations as far as how you want to kill them. I normally hop in the chopper and unleash hell with the autocannons, just taking down hordes of them.
You don't want to be anywhere near that shit, trust me.
I think that's overkill. This isn't Nam.
Just admit you're a pussy.
It's not only because I love killing things with big guns. It's mostly because these are some of the most destructive invasive species in the country.
Yeah, they cause like 2.5 billion taxpayer dollars a year in damages.
That's a lot of bacon.
That's money that could go to a good cause, like either of the wars we're funding.
Or maybe finish my fucking wall.
Nah, I'm all set.
There's no walling these hogs off, and there's already over 2.5 million wild boar in the state of Texas alone.
Wild boar are the perfect example of why limits on magazine capacity are stupid.
We did barely survive that encounter. I wouldn't mind a few more shots.
Having 50-round magazines around is great until somebody shoots up a school with one.
I can understand certain weapon regulations like that, but some hunting regulations in certain places are uninformed and downright nonsensical. Canada is having a real problem with that right now.
The wildlife should be managed by the people who actually know it. I have some pull with Texas Parks and Wildlife, so you can thank me for the loose rules in these parts.
Well, luckily, there really aren't many regulations on feral hogs.
Half the fun is the fact that you try to knock down as many as you can before the horde runs off.
I'd say that helps the sport for these. You'll almost never find a hog alone, and it's perfectly legal to bait them into an open area, so you won't need to put too much effort in finding them.
It can be very fun no matter how you're doing it. The more carnage, the better.
I have seen people go straight SEAL Team 6 on them with night vision.
This is the only animal you can go crazy on. S-tier sport.
I'd back that up to A tier. At the end of the day, this isn't really hunting. This is extermination. Like, the classic hunt is one where you love and respect the animal you're hunting, not killing as many as you can, like rats.
I'll go with the expert here. What about yield?
It's not exactly like pork you would buy at the store, but there's a lot of cuts and recipes you can work with.
It doesn't hurt that they also get over 400 pounds at times.
It seems like you have a lot in common with them.
Like the fact that they'll eat absolutely anything.
Stop comparing me to the hogs.
They don't all have one taste. They taste different depending on what they're eating, which is why it doesn't resemble that of domestic pigs. Meat is meat, though. You can always find a way to eat it.
I think we can go A tier on yield to average out the stanky hogs.
I'm good with that. They make pretty good sausages, especially the piglets.
But who's going to be friends with Pooh Bear?
I'm with you. Age is always the biggest factor when it comes to that gamey taste people don't like. Make sure to watch out for trichinosis.
Trigger what?
It's a foodborne type of parasitic worm that can grow into your brain and kill you.
I'm actually starting to think that's why Sleepy is so fucked up, worms in the brain.
Ah!
Stop it. This isn't Baldur's Gate 3. What about expenses?
If you're just taking down one, it'll be like any other big game animal. But if you want to actually make an impact on their population, you want to get yourself an AR-15.
Like Obama showed us a few moments ago, you probably want a sidearm too.
Good pistols aren't cheap.
Unless it's the cheap ones.
Still, though, needing 2 guns is pretty rough on the receipt.
It's still optional, but bags of bait and any all-terrain vehicles will help the effort massively and hurt the expenses.
Yeah, I'm not lugging 12 hogs all over the place.
We can do an average on expenses at C tier. You can just use sleds instead of buying ATVs.
Fair enough.
Effort might be the downfall of the feral hogs. You finally shoot a whole bunch of them, and it quickly turns into a lot of work.
That's a lot of meat on the ground, even if you can find them.
The processing time alone will be hours of work.
It's about the weight of a moose laying out here, and Butcher Drone only picked one up so far.
Well, we did have a lot of guns, so most people won't get this many. Want to settle effort at D tier?
Sounds good. What are we thinking for the final rank?
I'm not super low on them, but I prefer most of the natives in the high tiers.
Definitely not high tier, but I don't want to go too low on them either. It's good eats sometimes, and a great cause to hunt them. I'm around B or C tier.
I guess they are kind of like moose in volume, but arguably more fun, as morbid as that seems.
So B tier?
B for bacon.
Hard to argue with that. What's next?
We are going a little long on time. It'll have to be just a couple more.
Let's give Steve the floor.
I agree. What are we missing?
Plenty of options. Some really cool ones out here in Texas, too. You got pronghorn, oryx, kudu, peccary.
Ha ha! Suck my peccary, Donnie.
I'd rather suck on the end of this rifle.
It's difficult to say, but it's no hunting tier list without black bear.
Nice one.
I've never heard of black bear being considered as viable game.
And who's going to be friends with Piglet?
I'm not sure what Bear Winnie the Pooh was, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't black.
Black bear appears in all sorts of colors, including blonde, so Pooh actually could be a black bear.
Well, most importantly, how's black bear taste?
It's a bit dodgy at times. Like most animals, it depends on where they are and what they're eating. For example, spring bears eating berries for months will taste great, while fall coastal bears can taste and even smell a little like rotting fish.
That's a deal breaker for me, I think.
That just tells me what bear I'm targeting.
Right? I want to taste a berry bear.
How does a berry black bear compare to elk or venison for table fare?
Bars.
Well, it's not quite as good as your average venison. I even eat my gamey old moose steaks before dipping into the bear meat, if I'm being honest.
And the coastal bears?
I've had a few from some Alaska hunts, and some can be pretty bad, but most just have a little salmon finish and are otherwise palatable.
So they are not sounding great if I'm being honest.
You can make a good smoked summer sausage with bear meat, though. It's not bad.
Bears have more than just meat going for them, too. The pelt is great for carpets and blankets, and the claws are collectible.
Altogether, I could call it A tier for yield even with mid-meat.
Facts. What about sport? Are they fun to hunt?
They are a blast to hunt. You can treat it like moose hunting, so basically just fishing until you spot one. Then you can go to shore, which is mandatory, and approach them or call them in with a predator call.
So you can't just walk around and find them?
You might be able to, but only the best hunters can sneak up on a black bear on foot. The main reason for that is their noses, which are many times more powerful than a bloodhound.
The only time I've ever been bear hunting, I got winded by a big sow before I could get a shot lined up.
Yep, that's why I prefer the approach from the water. I even came up with a fully aquatic approach where you get in a wetsuit and approach the bear in the water with a bow. A feat which was accomplished by my good friend and avid bear hunter, Clay Newcomb.
That's insane. Dude swam up to a bear?
Yeah, he did. He got about 10 yards away before he popped up and shot it.
That doesn't seem super safe, but I respect the hustle.
Oh, come on. It's just a black bear. It's not a grizzly.
Black bears kill more people per year than grizzly or brown bears.
Most of that is because they are far more common and in more populated places. Their range is even expanding, which means there's never been more opportunity for a black bear hunt.
The tags aren't ridiculous in most places.
Well, if I'm buying a boat to go after them, that'll hurt the bottom line.
Good one. It's optional, but it's the way I like to do it.
With the standard big game hunting weapon and utility package that puts expenses around D tier.
Sure, it can be a costly venture, but not unlike that of duck, moose, or any water-related hunting. Plus, the sport is worth more than the yield for me.
They do respond really well to predator calls.
Having a bear pull up on you must get the heart pumping.
100%. It's a major thrill to hunt bears.
I wouldn't put the hunt up there with deer and turkey. A little too difficult for me.
Yeah, that's why I fish for the majority of the time. And if I don't see a bear, then it was just a day of fishing. But if you can manage to get a bear, it's an accomplishment.
I like fishing. More fishing videos.
One thing at a time, this video is going to be a monster as it is.
Comment what you want for fishing or hunting videos in the future. How are we feeling for sport?
Sounds like A tier for sport.
A tier is good for me. As far as effort, it's not as bad as elk or moose, but still a sizable animal to butcher.
It kind of depends on your method. If you go Steve's way in a boat, then you'll just be fishing most of the time until you briefly chase one. But if you're on foot, it seems like a ton of effort to track one down and somehow stay downwind the entire time. D tier effort?
That's reasonable. What do we think?
I like fishing. I like bears. Sounds fun.
It's kind of like a moose hunt, but a lot less work and worse meat.
That's a pretty good analysis. How about B tier?
I could even go a tier lower, but I've never tried the boat approach.
I'm good with whatever. It seems like more of a change of pace target for more experienced or specialized hunters.
My buddy Clay would disagree strongly if he were here, but it's not an opinion without merit. I would recommend black bear to hunters who already bagged their turkey limit in the spring and are itching for something new.
All right, last one, guys.
Let's just cover the big boys, the inland grizzly or coastal brown bear, basically the same thing.
Daw bears!
Now we're talking. This is the real challenge for a hunter to become a legend.
These behemoths are very rare in the lower 48, with most being in Alaska where you would also find the Kodiak bear. Again, basically the same thing.
Are they anything like hunting for black bear?
They usually occupy the same habitat, so the hunt is very similar, but the general danger level is much higher. You don't even really want to use a predator call. It's just too risky.
You also run the risk of running into a mother bear with cubs, which can be a death sentence.
I got charged by a sow with her cubs, and it was pretty terrifying. Luckily, she just false charged us and ran off.
That'll put some hair on your chest.
That wasn't even like the scariest encounter I've had. One time, a group of us were on Fognac Island in Alaska, and a huge Kodiak bear attacked us during lunch.
Did you make it out?
No, I died tragically.
Bummer. R.I.P.
Joe, he's standing right here. He obviously survived it.
It was a close one. My head was only a couple feet away from its jaws. We all scrambled in a panic, and that kind of confused the bear. When my producer and good friend Giannis hit the bear in the face with a hiking pole. He lost the nerve he had coming in and turned to run down the hill, knocking over another guy, Garrett, onto his back. Last thing I saw of that bear was him tearing down the hill with Garrett riding on top of him.
Wow, that's terrifying.
Did he get ate?
Nope, he was fine. We all were. A scary event, to say the least. I froze up like a possum.
I'm glad you made it out.
Same here. Has it stopped you from hunting in brown bear country?
Nah, man, I do have a certain respect for them, but nothing will stop me on my quest for a trophy grizzly bear.
So you haven't got one yet?
Not yet. I've hunted for him a bunch of times, but never sealed the deal on the big male I've been looking for. The funny part is, I've seen trophy bears while I'm out hunting for other game, but never when I have the tag in my pocket.
I know the feeling. It's like they go on vacation the second you buy a tag.
Brown bears are elusive as it is. Never mind trying for a trophy.
That's pretty much what all brown bear hunters are going for. I haven't heard anything good about the meat.
It's the same deal as the black bear, but brown bears usually don't eat as many berries and prefer herbivores and fish, which means that the meat will be generally poor quality, especially in older bears, which is what most people are after anyway.
If you can somehow find a grizzly with little access to fish and loads of berries around, you can get some good meat, but good luck finding a place like that.
Not to mention that giant parasites and trichinosis are common in bear meat, so you'll want to be cautious.
That's going to hurt the yield.
Yeah, it sounds like you're only getting the pelt and claws as trophies. Seems like a waste to me.
If you live by Native American standards, then it is a waste because you aren't using every part of the animal. But I like to think it's still a humane way to help control the population and fund the conservation of the land by purchasing tags.
That's fine, but wouldn't it be better to target species that are edible?
All meat is edible if you're brave enough.
The tags are going to be there regardless. Nothing controls the brown bear population because they don't have natural predators besides us.
But just like wolves, they once had a much larger range, so we're effectively managing an already decimated population.
That's fair to say in the lower 48, but in Alaska, it's a different story. There's around 30,000 brown bears in that state. Now that's a healthy population.
Also, non-resident tags make up over 60% of brown bear hunts in Alaska, so it's fair to say it's one of the state's biggest financial opportunities for tourists.
That's fair, but I still wouldn't recommend this hunt for the vast majority of people. It is a trophy hunt, after all.
Where does that put the yield?
I'd say D tier accounting for the lack of meat.
It's still possible to eat one, but the pelt, claws, and mount are worth more than anything. I'd be right with black bear at A tier yield.
It's an S tier pelt, but I do see Barack's point here. Missing the meat quality is big for me, which is why I've passed up on most grizzlies I've seen. I'm at B tier for yield. What do we think?
I'll agree with that. My sons would tell you there's nothing quite like a perfect trophy mount of an apex predator in your house.
What about sport? Is it any more fun knowing you could be mauled to death at any moment?
It's typically not so dramatic as that, but it does have a different feel to it when you see an 800-pound predator in your crosshairs. One big difference is the fact that they don't always go down even if the first shot is a good shot. You'll need to track the bear and put another one into him if need be.
Seems stressful for both parties.
It certainly can be, but hiking around in bear country looking for monsters is an amazing experience.
You could consider it the ultimate hunt if you land your trophy, but a vast majority of the hunts end in disappointment. The bear's nose knows all.
Can you do the boat hunting method?
It's nowhere near as successful as it is with black bear, mainly due to population, so you'll probably just end up fishing and never get your bear.
So spot and stalking the largest predator in the world is your only option?
Polar bears got them beat by weight, but yeah, you're right. It's the same way you would hunt elk or mule deer, except they can smell you from a mile away and kill you with one swing.
The possibility of death helps the monotony of staring at one side of a mountain from another side of a mountain. Still, I don't find the hunt particularly recreational, more of the ultimate test of expertise and grit.
Not if you just bait the bears in and take them out. That's why I banned those types of tactics during my term.
Although I would never personally bait a bear in or shoot a swimming caribou from a boat, I will defend such methods being used by subsistence hunters since they are the ones that actually need to live off the harsh landscape of Alaska.
You tell him, Steve. Good thing I reversed that bullshit when I got into office.
Like most things I did.
And it's going to happen again.
Hey, no fair.
When I take everything into consideration, I think it's a B tier for sport.
I would be one tier higher considering the skill that's required to actually get it done.
I think B tier is okay. It's too difficult and dangerous for 90% of hunters.
We should have another tier called danger in the big game hunting tier list.
Write that down, Obama.
I'll make a mental note.
Is it even a question for expenses?
Definitely on the more expensive side for any hunt. Brown bear tags are like double the price of elk tags, and you got to factor in travel costs to Alaska and figure out firearm shipping fees and all sorts of garbage.
So about an arm and a leg?
Exactly. F tier on expenses, it's no joke. Especially since you'll need to plan to be out there for at least a week if you want a real shot at a bear, or you'll be going home with empty hands and empty pockets.
Plus, you'll need a good sidearm and some bear spray if you're walking into bear country.
Might as well buy a goddamn plane, too.
F tier expenses for sure. And I'm thinking it won't be any better for effort.
It's a ton of effort just getting to Alaska. Then you get there, and it's just all mountains and rough terrain.
It's an amazing place, but it can be very unforgiving. It takes twice as long to cover any distance.
Butchering a brown bear is probably not easy either.
It's a giant animal, so it's definitely no walk in the park, even if you don't plan on eating it.
Even a couple guys can't take the whole bear down in one trip from wherever they shot it.
It's a tall task for a real outdoorsman.
So F tier effort?
Yep, sounds right.
So where do we put the brown bear?
Well, there's not a whole lot going for it besides bragging rights or a money flex, so I wouldn't be high on them.
There goes Mr. No Testosterone again.
I'm not going to lie, I'm biased because I've hunted for them and know great people that hunt for them, but I'll say this. If an animal brings someone joy by hunting it, and it's within the parameters of population management, then what's the harm in letting them do it?
I kind of like this guy. I'll agree with whatever he says.
Joe, we're not agreeing with him.
Oh, my bad.
Above all, I think brown bears are worse than black bears as a game animal, and I don't even like hunting for black bears very much.
I could convince you otherwise if you come to my cabin in Alaska for some spring bear hunts.
Ugh, all right, I'll freeze my tits off for bear sausage, I guess.
Sounds like the start of a good joke told at a gay bar.
Ha-ha, rare sleepy W.
I would put brown bear with wolves in D tier.
I would too, but because they should not be consumed. I wonder if a cub would taste better.
Probably.
Stop it.
I think few people really give them an honest chance. Interior grizzly tastes just like black bear, and I've had coastal brown bear that was pretty mild, especially when smoked. I think brown bear is B tier.
B for brown and B for bear?
I think we can average things out at C tier solely because you absolutely have to go to Alaska if you want to hunt brown bears, which is a pain in the ass.
He's got a point.
It's worth the journey. Nothing like that habitat, man.
Sure, but if you're just starting out hunting and are picking a species that you would like to target, how would brown bears do?
Pretty bad. It would be strange to hunt brown bears if you've never hunted deer.
Can we meet at C tier for all the downsides like travel cost and effort?
Guess so. We better wrap this up. Don't want to be out here too long. The sun will kill Joe.
Oh, so that sizzling sound was me?
Why don't we all grab a hog and head down to the barn? I can already smell some backstraps cooking.
Sounds good to me. I'd like to thank the presidents for including me in the tier list.
I know I'm just the vice president, but it was cool having you on.
Joe, you are the president. It took me a while to accept too.
When the hell did that happen?
It was really nice to meet you. I'm sure we can plan a hunt in the near future.
Always good to have you, whether it's in the field or in the kitchen.
Can't have a hunting tier list without the best hunter.
You're too kind. I'm far from the best. There's guys out there that can hunt circles around me. But since this video could reach the newest generation of hunters, I'd like to give them a few parting words. And I quote, "In a civilized and cultivated country, wild animals only continue to exist at all when preserved by sportsmen. The excellent people who protest against all hunting and consider sportsmen as enemies of wildlife are ignorant of the fact that in reality, the genuine sportsman is by all odds the most important factor in keeping the larger and more valuable wild creatures from total extermination." Theodore Roosevelt.
Wow, this guy even quoted a founding father.
Teddy Roosevelt was not a founding father, but he was one of the best presidents ever, as well as a legendary hunter.
Even Teddy knew the vegans would become a threat.
Don't let people tell you what you can and can't do when it's within the law, especially when you're holding a gun.
With that being said, make sure to read up on rules and regulations for whatever and wherever you're hunting, so you don't upset the land, its inhabitants, or the game warden.
And never let people tell you what flavor of ice cream is the best.
I think what Joe is saying is there's nothing like hunting for your favorite target. My list has mule deer at the top spot, for instance.
And I prefer the axis deer on my property. Doesn't take a ton of effort to go after them.
I want to thank you all for watching. This one was a doozy, so if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. I'll also leave links to some of the other channels and videos I used for research, including MeatEater with our buddy Steve.
I sure appreciate it, man.
Fantastic show. Feel free to add tips and tricks for new hunters or your personal hunting tier list in the comment section.
You can trade recipes and hunting stories in the comments as well. There's no shortage of those.
Why don't we go trade some of our own over some fresh venison?
Right behind you, bushy boy.
Bye, guys.